On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Is 8:06 on this Monday morning in the nation's capital, and it's a busy Monday morning at that. We got you covered 6 ways to Sunday, as Chuck Schumer would say. Coming up in 30 minutes, we're going to check in with our friend Emily Miller, who covers the Alec Baldwin investigation. Baldwin now indicted once again, criminal charges stemming from that homicide on the set of his film. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Good morning, Julie. It came as a surprise to many people to hear this announcement from Ron DeSantis yesterday, where he suspended his campaign and endorsed Donald Trump. And we want to hear from you, especially if you're a DeSantis voter, but if you're a Trump voter too. If you were going to vote for Donald Trump, do you forgive Ron DeSantis and Ron DeSantis voters? Are you ready to welcome him in to the fray? And if you were going to vote for DeSantis, well, where do you go now? Nikki Haley thinks that she can win your vote. Is she right? 888-630-9625, 888-630 WMAL.
If there was anything I could do to produce a favorable outcome, more campaign stops, more interviews, I would do it. But I can't ask our supporters to volunteer their time and donate their resources if we don't have a clear path to victory. Accordingly, I am today suspending my campaign. I'm proud to have delivered on 100% of my promises, and I will not stop now. It's clear to me that a majority of Republican primary voters want to give Donald Trump another chance. They watch his presidency get stymied by relentless resistance, and they see Democrats using lawfare this day to attack him. Well, I've had disagreements with Donald Trump, such as on the coronavirus pandemic and his elevation of Anthony Fauci. Trump is superior to the current incumbent, Joe Biden. That is clear. I signed a pledge to support the Republican nominee, and I will honor that pledge. He has my endorsement because we can't go back to the old Republican guard of yesteryear, a repackaged form of warmed-over corporatism that Nikki Haley represents. The days of putting Americans last, of kowtowing to large corporations, of caving to woke ideology are over.
Wow. So they're not only a full-throated endorsement of Donald Trump, although drawing at least a specific distinction with regard to COVID policies, but then a not-so-backhanded slight to Nikki Haley and what she represents in her wing of the Republican Party. Donald Trump for his response at a rally last night.
Before we begin, I'd like to take time to congratulate Ron DeSantis and, of course, a really terrific person who I've gotten to know, his wife, Casey, for having run a great campaign for president.
Didn't they suggest that Casey DeSantis had faked her breast cancer for publicity purposes? I mean, Trump didn't specifically, but some of his little foot soldiers.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
well, this is,
President, he did. He ran a really good campaign, I will tell you. It's not easy. They think it's easy doing this stuff, right? It's not easy. But as you know, he left the campaign trail today at 3 p.m., and in so doing, he was very gracious, and he endorsed me, so I appreciate it.
There you go. And so Trump is solidifying his hold. He's polling right now over 50% in New Hampshire. The primary's tomorrow. So what do you think? 888-630-9625. How do you think this affects the entire race and specifically your vote? 888-630 WMAL.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's now actually a two-person race.
As Nikki Haley said after Iowa, yeah.
Yes. So we'll see.
We've not thrown our support behind any candidate. And it's actually, I got to say, it's kind of freeing.
It is.
This time around to not do that. Back in 2016, I publicly said that I was supporting Ted Cruz in the primaries.
Mm-hmm.
He was the candidate that was best aligned with my politics and my perspective and everything. And I'll be honest, and I've been honest from the beginning, I was suspicious about Donald Trump. I didn't know if he was a real conservative. I didn't know if he was going to actually uphold but boy, he surprised me wonderfully. And as soon as he won the nomination, I was completely on board because there was no way I was going to support Hillary Clinton or even worse, do anything that might help Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Like there were a lot of people like, well, I can't support Hillary, but I won't support Trump. Okay, then you're supporting Hillary.
Right, exactly.
Because that's how this works.
That's right.
And so I was 100% supporting Trump as soon as he got the nomination. And this time around, I haven't even, it's like, I just want to watch this play out.
Yeah, that's how I am.
Yes. And honestly, I was surprised by this announcement. I think I said last week, I expect DeSantis, he's got enough money to stay in it, be sort of a strong second place. So like Romney in 2008, he's sort of the heir
No, I
apparent.
was not. At this point, I feel like with the polling, I think it's time for everyone to stop and get behind one candidate, and let's move on.
Well, and I
focus on Biden.
The fact that he did what he did when he did it 2 days before the New Hampshire primary, and in the same breath supporting Donald Trump, because a lot of times they'll bow out. Like Chris Christie still hasn't endorsed anybody.
Well, I
right?
also thought I thought he would bow out after South Carolina because I thought it would for Nikki Haley to lose, to come in third in her own state. I think that would have been a way to sort of hurt Nikki. That's what I thought he would do.
And I agree. And I actually thought he would stick around even longer than that. The fact that he did it when he did it and the way he did it tells me that there was a conversation.
Maybe.
And I think that maybe there's an agreement here.
But to me, see, that's a miscalculation. To me, if Trump really wanted to hurt Nikki Haley, he would have encouraged DeSantis to stay in until then, because she would have come in third. And it would have hurt her in her own state with him on stage.
Oh, for South Carolina. Yeah, but I think it hurts her even more in New Hampshire because now all that support goes to Trump. Trump could get close to 60% now.
Possibly.
And Nikki Haley's that much more distant. All right, what do you think? 888-630 WMAL. Brad in Fairfax, were you supporting Ron DeSantis? Where do you stand on all this?
Yes, I definitely support DeSantis. And Larry, real fast pet peeve. I took Arabic for a year and a half after 9/11. It is pronounced Houthi, not Houthi.
Oh,
okay?
Thank you for that.
Now,
I've heard it both ways,
correct.
but I will
Arabic.
change myself now to Houthi.
Houthi.
Yeah, I've read the Arabic. It's definitely Houthi. Okay. For me, Trump DeSantis would be a dream ticket. I definitely forgive DeSantis. Here's my reason why. I think DeSantis was such an effective decision maker and a doer as governor. Yeah. You know, Trump's no spring chicken himself. If anything happens to him, I want somebody who's competent and proven as a good executive leader.
Yes.
To fill in if something ever happens.
100%, Brad. Not only do you know your Arabic, but I think you know your. I think a Trump DeSantis ticket is unstoppable. I love that idea.
So do I.
All right.
Me too.
All right. There's Brad in Fairfax jumping in here. How about Ben in Culpeper? Ben, what do you say? How does DeSantis' announcement affect your vote?
Well, I got to tell you, Larry, on November 9th, 2022, I was one of the many people chanting 2 more years for Governor DeSantis. I was a big supporter. I was really excited when he got in the race. But Trump was always my backup should Ron DeSantis not pull ahead in the race, not have the showing that I was hoping he would have. So now I was actually about to buy some DeSantis campaign gear, but now I'm dusting off my Veterans for Trump hat from 2020.
There you go. Yeah, and Ben, I think that you represent I don't know a DeSantis supporter, and I'm not talking about the people who worked for the campaigns, because there was bad blood between the people who were getting paid by either DeSantis or Trump, but actual just regular people, regular voters. If you supported DeSantis, it's not a big leap to support Trump and vice versa. They are the same voter, I think, principle and policy-wise. It's certainly not a Haley thing, right? Do you know any DeSantis supporter who might go to Haley, Ben?
Not a single one. And I got to tell you, Nikki Haley, I think she had a lot of there were a lot of people that liked her when she was the UN ambassador in the Trump administration.
Yeah.
I know, like, Ben Shapiro was just gushing over her. But in the years since then, I think her true colors have really shown through. And I can't think of a single DeSantis supporter who would enthusiastically support her, if at all.
Ben in Culpeper, Vets for Trump. He's dusting off the gear now and ready to go. Thanks for the call, Ben. The rest of you, 888-630 WMAL, and we'll play a little bit of Nikki Haley yesterday. Appears she's playing the race card now in New Hampshire. We'll let you know what she said there. In the meantime, it's 8:15 WMAL.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
WMAL, making sense of the forecast. Because you never know what Mother Nature has in store. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
We were the only Indian family in our small southern town. I was teased every day for being brown. So anyone that wants to question it can go back and look at what I've said on how hard it was to grow up in the Deep South as a brown girl. Anybody can look at my record and see when Walter Scott was shot down by a dirty cop, how I made sure that the Walter Scott family didn't suffer because we put the first body camera bill in the country in place. Anybody can look at the fact that when we had 9 amazing souls die in Mother Emanuel Church, I did something that no Republican or Democrat ever wanted to touch, which was call for the Confederate flag to come down because it would take 2/3 of the House and Senate and was an impossible feat.
This is a really different message than she had in Iowa. By the way, she's talking to those same 2 journalists for NBC News that Vivek Ramaswamy absolutely, destroyed and cleaned up. She went on to say, you want to know what it was like when I was growing up? I was disqualified from a beauty pageant because I wasn't white or black. They didn't know where to put me. Beauty pageant. We've come a long way from Jim Crow.
Yeah, she has a habit of talking in these woke ways. She does this often when she says things like, if you want a job well done, get a woman to do it. She's constantly talking about being a woman and what that sort of gives her extra powers. And, as a mother of 3 boys, I don't like that kind of language. I don't like the future is feminist, the future is feminine kind of language. And she constantly sort of falls back into that.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that she's using the race card now.
And just from a pure political standpoint, I'm always suspicious of politicians who change their message depending on the audience.
Absolutely. She's trying to score intersectional points with these extremely liberal journalists, and I don't like that.
I've been watching Nikki Haley since 2010 when she ran for governor of South Carolina. It's funny, when she's running for South Carolina, she wasn't running on a message of, you're a really racist state. Yeah. And growing up here, you treated me poorly. It's like,
exactly.
No message of that when you're looking for votes from South Carolina.
Exactly. And again, this is that sort of sorting language, putting people in, into categories.
Brown, white,
Yes. And the oppressed and the oppressor that Vivek absolutely rejects. Yeah. And when asked about it, he destroys the reporters, and she didn't have the courage to do that.
Adam in McLean. Adam, you were a DeSantis supporter, so where do you stand now after yesterday's announcement?
Yes, good morning. I am actually undecided, but I am considering a vote for Kennedy, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why? Why is that? I'm curious how you transition from Ron DeSantis to RFK, because they have very different views on a lot of domestic issues.
Absolutely. But I don't think that Trump would actually end up accounting for the medical tyranny that we've experienced for the last 3 years. I think that we should not have, it's a harsh statement, but we shouldn't have government sanctioned murder through these vaccines. I think it's very dangerous. And Kennedy, with all of his faults, at least understands that this is a very dangerous game that we are playing as a nation right now.
Kennedy is considered kind of a radical on environmental issues. Does that worry you?
Absolutely. It does, but at least he's coming from a conservationist mindset rather than using the environment to impose tyranny. I haven't seen a lot of that recently.
Adam and McLean, I appreciate you jumping in here. And listen, if the vaccine is definitely your top priority and your top issue, it would make sense that RFK Jr. is your choice. All right, we'll continue with your calls here, 888-630-9625. All right, we're continuing with your calls here on a pretty momentous day, the day after Ron DeSantis suspended his campaign right before the New Hampshire primary. What will it do to your vote? Susan in Accokeek. Susan, I'm told because you're a suburban woman that you're all in for Nikki Haley. What do you think, Susan?
I think you're sadly mistaken. As a matter of fact, I think she is the rhino Hillary Clinton. I think she's horrible. And if Ron DeSantis isn't the vice presidential nominee, then I do think that the people of Florida are very lucky to keep the greatest governor in the United States. I think. That's my opinion, humbly.
Yeah, no, listen, I think that was part of the reason for his campaign is that he did a great job in Florida. He also, let's not forget, turned a swing state, a perennial swing state, into a solid red state. The fact that Trump won't really have to campaign in Florida this time around or spend much money there is huge for his reelection purposes, Susan. So you would like DeSantis to be the running mate?
If possible. possible. But if he goes on and continues his last 2 years as governor, that would be great, too. And I think that the last 2 years of the next Trump administration, he'd have a great job there doing
Susan.
something.
Thank you for the call. Let's get to Brooke and Chantilly. Again, all these suburban women, very important. Brooke, what do you think?
Hi, Larry. I was absolutely for Governor DeSantis, and I voted for Trump the first 2 times. And, if he's our candidate, then I'll vote for him again. But I just, I'm afraid of the riots. I'm afraid of the crazy people on the left tearing us down. I'm afraid to say that I'm a Republican. I just am not certain that he's great for the country, although he's the best for the country.
You know what? I totally get what you're saying, Brooke. I do. And just bear this in mind. The left and the media, they want you to feel afraid. That's why they have the threat of violence hanging over us all the time. That's what totalitarian bullies do. Keep the faith, Brooke. It's 8:30.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:36 on this Monday morning. In 30 minutes, we'll hand it off to Chris Plant for his crack analysis of the DeSantis withdrawal from the race and how things are looking for New Hampshire tomorrow. In the meantime, I'm Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. And Julie, we have news out of New Mexico, where over the weekend, Alec Baldwin was indicted once again on criminal involuntary manslaughter charges. And I'm sure you're wondering to yourself, wait a minute, I thought he's already dodged that. Well, not so much. Emily Miller is going to explain it all to us. Emily Miller, of course, from her fantastic and enlightening EmilyPostNews.com Substack. Emily, thanks for joining us, my friend.
It's my pleasure, as always.
So what's the story here? Because I thought that there were charges and then they decided that there wasn't enough evidence to try him. And is this a double jeopardy thing? What's going on?
Oh, no, this is not double jeopardy. He is going to trial. This is as serious as it can be. He's been indicted by a grand jury. The grand jury reported out on Friday that he's been indicted on 2 charges of involuntary manslaughter. One is the more serious charge, which is for total disregard or indifference for the safety of others. The other is also a felony for negligent use of a firearm.
Emily, you had reported before that the family of Helena Hutchins, the victim in this case, they were not going to cooperate because they had reached an out-of-court settlement with Alec Baldwin. So how does that play into this?
Well, the victim's family isn't going to be a witness because the victim, obviously, her name is Helena Hutchins, as you mentioned, has passed away. So they're witnesses that went to the grand jury with people who are on the set when Alec Baldwin, and just to remind people who haven't followed this case closely, Alec Baldwin was on a movie set in October 2021, and he took a gun that was loaded with real ammunition and pointed it directly at his cinematographer, Helena Hutchins. And even though he denies pulling the trigger, evidence has shown that he did pull the trigger, pulled back the hammer and pulled the trigger, shot her, killed her, and the bullet went through her and lodged in his director, Joel Souza's shoulder.
Sorry, Emily. Keep going.
So what you all have been asking about is sort of it's been back and forth because he was charged before. So when the district attorney originally picked up the case, and the district attorney charged him with involuntary manslaughter, two counts. And then this has been such a complicated case and gone back and forth, mostly because Alec Baldwin has this really great legal team. And his legal team has gotten him out of this repeatedly. But that's not to say the same for the armorer. And the armorer on the set was the person who loaded the gun, or at least allegedly loaded the gun. She's going to trial next month, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. So she's been quite the scapegoat of this whole situation while he has gotten out of it. And now that's no longer the case, since he's been charged equally.
Well, Emily, tell us also, there's this new video that came out that is pretty damning to Alec Baldwin. Do you know the one that came out in November and what it shows?
Yeah, that's NBC released that videos. They were just showing that Alec Baldwin, the intent was actually supposedly to help Alec Baldwin. It showed him that he knows the gun safety rules because he pointed people out of the direction of his gun, and he pulled it. They released it. His team released it to NBC most likely just to try to help him. But what's really the most important thing here to know is that he already tried to have a plea deal with the prosecution a few months ago, and it fell through mostly due to his own fault. Again, as is NBC reporting, he seems to have a tie-in with his legal team. So that means this case is going to a jury trial, because there's no way to have a deal.
And we're speaking with Emily Miller. Emily News Post is the name of her Emily Post News is the name of her Substack, where she does her independent reporting, and it's always great stuff. Emily, there's a lot of argument here about the fact that there was live ammunition on the set. There shouldn't have been live ammunition on the set. Alec Baldwin always claimed that when he was given the firearm on set, he was told that it was safe and just had blanks. All that being said, it is still ultimately his responsibility if he's pulling that trigger. That's partly why he claimed he never pulled the trigger, right?
Right. Well, his whole defense, and going into this trial, his defense is going to be, I didn't pull the trigger. But an FBI investigation, a forensics investigation at Quantico, as well as an independent New Mexico state investigation, proved that the trigger was pulled. So that's going to be, we'll see what his new defense is going into this trial and what the jury thinks of it. But as you said, why he's being prosecuted is because he's bound to the same gun safety laws as all of us are, which is don't point a gun at anyone. Don't pull the trigger. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot, and assume the gun is loaded. And he did not check to see if the gun was loaded with live rounds, which was obviously unexpected to be on a movie set.
Can he, and forgive me for being like trite here, but can his defense from that charge, Emily, be, listen, I'm an actor. I'm not expected to know such things. I'm just a dumb actor.
Yes, and it will be. It will be, except for the fact that the SAG union, the union for movies, has said that everybody needs to check their own gun. George Clooney famously came out and said, I always check my own gun. Yeah. So, yes, it will be, but in the eyes of the law, there's no, like, special carve-out for actors in movies. You know, like, you can't say to the grand jury, well, this law doesn't apply if you're an actor in a movie.
Right.
Right. Right? And so he's charged with total disregard or indifference for the safety of others. I mean, that's a pretty high charge.
Yeah. And on the face of it, it sure looks like he's guilty of that, because that's exactly what you see in this case, the disregard and reckless behavior. And God, and it's and I love the fact, the way you write about this story, Emily, you never lose sight of the fact that Helena is a human being, and she, everything is, it's all about Alec Baldwin and the actor in the movies, but this is a human being who lost her life for no reason on the set of this movie, and we shouldn't lose sight of that.
She was a wife and mother of a young boy, and she was killed because of his recklessness. And just to remind people, Alec Baldwin was asked multiple times by the Armorer to ask to train using these guns. If he picked out these guns, these are real guns, these are not props. And he was asked to train, and he refused multiple times.
He's also a producer on this film too, by the way. So I mean, he's responsible for all the employees as the employer.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But he's not being charged in that regard. He's being charged mostly as what he did, which was he took a loaded gun, he pointed it directly he pulled it out of the holster, likely put his finger on the trigger at that point, pointed it at Helena Hutchins and pulled the trigger. Now, also remind people that after he did that, he left the set. He didn't try to help her, but she bled out there for about 30 minutes, and he never came back.
Emily Miller, great reporting as always. Always appreciate your coverage of this story. I wish it were you who would have been able to interview him instead of George Stephanopoulos in that ridiculous propaganda interview.
I know. Well, if this goes to jury trial, which I expect this to go to a jury trial, probably not until next year, though, or late this year, I'm going to go to New Mexico and cover it myself, because this has been such an interesting case on whether Hollywood actors have privilege and special privilege in criminal justice.
Especially well-connected political actors like Alec Baldwin. Thank you, Emily. Great stuff.
Good point. You too. Talk to you later.
It is 8:45 now. All right, Julie Gunlock. Really interesting watching Russell Brand sort of get red-pilled, as people like to say. Russell Brand, of course, the British comedian and actor who has started his podcast on YouTube and on various other platforms. And all during COVID and all during just sort of the rise of the authoritarian state in Western Europe and certainly in England, he's sort of gotten, found a lane for speaking out as a rabid civil libertarian.
Right.
Let's call I don't want to call him a conservative necessarily. Right. However, people are really raising their eyebrows over a video he just put out about why he wears a crucifix around his neck. Listen.
The reason I wear a cross is because Christianity, and in particular the figure of Christ, are, it seems to me, inevitably becoming more important as I become more familiar with suffering, purpose, self, and not self. I'm reading the Bible a lot more, and as I've told you before, I'm reading Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life. When I grew up, Christianity seemed like it was either really irrelevant and old-fashioned and sort of dusty and sort of incense and sort of Domine, or they tried to modernise it, and it seems just like, right, okay, we're going to talk about Jesus. And like both of those routes seem like, I don't know if there's anything for me. And I suppose it takes a certain amount of adulthood, and it might be different for all of us. For me, it seems that it's taken quite a lot to recognise that I need a personal relationship with God. It occurred to me that if instead of always talking to myself inwardly, I could replace one of those voices with an indwelling God. It says in Galatians, it is our job to die so that as Christ died on the cross, he might be reborn in us. I'm very interested to hear what you think, because for me, my heart is open.
Just so you know, listen, and I know there's a lot there, and some of it may sound sort of new agey gobbledygook mixed in with Christianity. However, for a Hollywood actor, especially somebody who lived the life that he lived for as long as he did, that's a big deal, actually, what you just heard. And he is definitely on a path of sorts. Where it ends up, who knows? But
he really is an interesting guy. I don't agree with him on everything, obviously, but he is an interesting guy, and he's certainly on a journey to discover.
Yes, and if Jesus Christ is part of that.
Is
Julie.
Yes.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks. We'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Here comes Chris Plant. Chris, do you have an announcement to make about your campaign?
Yes, I will never run for any elected office because, life is too good.
Understood.
Don't you think? It's why would you raise your hand if you'd like to be president of the United States?
No.
Come on.
Nope.
You get the airplane.
Maybe for a day.
And free housing. Maybe a month. I'd do a trip around the world.
Sure.
Then come home.
But you could do that without being president.
Yeah, see, there you go. That might be a better plan. There's a lot, as you know, we've got New Hampshire, we've got Trump and DeSantis dropping out, and that was all kinds of stuff, and the crazy guy at the border.